Well, the third episode of Loki decides to go back in time because, well, it's a time travel show. Now, to be fair, they did go to the 80s for McDonald's and stuff. You know, got a burger and fries and all that. And then, you know, the bad guys, or, well, the rogue TVA guys were blowing up timelines with, well, I don't know, maybe it's like temporal C4, something. Anywho, now they gotta find Ravonna, or Ravonna. I think it's Ravonna. I mean, back when I was reading the Avengers, and they had Kang in there, and then his later, more older version called Immortus, you know, had a wife, and because I was like, hey, this is all kind of like Doctor Who, and so I thought his wife's name was Ravonna because it rhymed with Ramana. Yeah, I thought of stupid stuff like that. Anyway, so this one's a step up from the other two, not by much. And it links to the end credit scene from Ant-Man Quantumania, which I know probably none of you saw it because why would you? So anyway, that was the end credit scene with this variant of Kang. And since Kang was, you know, in the movie and all these, oh, but unless if you hadn't seen Loki, but odds are more people did because apparently, I can't confirm this, but apparently Loki was the most popular of the MCU DP shows. So anyway, this one is a little better. You know, it's still, they're just chasing people. But hey, they got all dressed up for the era of the 1800s and all that stuff. And this variant is not someone who has traveled through time. It seems to suggest that he's the original Kang, which wasn't the story, at least as far as I knew. Maybe they changed it in the comics later or something along those lines. There were alternate versions of Kang, but they were all from the same point. I mean, it was a guy from the future who had a time machine, and he traveled originally back in time to be a pharaoh over Egypt. And it was one of these things, a typical Jack Kirbyism, where instead of aliens, it was a man from the future who had all this technology, and it was insinuating that he built the pyramids and stuff like that. And then the Fantastic Four show up, traveling back in time as well, albeit not as far back as he did, but nevertheless, and they run afoul of him. He tries to make the Invisible Woman his love slave and all this stuff. Later on, there was a Doctor Strange crossover when he went back in time too, but that's another story. But anyway, I believe that was supposed to be like the first appearance of the character, and then other versions of him would appear where he took on different identities all throughout time. But as this kept happening, it was, of course, if you change time and all that, divergent timelines and whatnot. Here, they seem to be suggesting instead of a man from the future, well, he was some guy from the 1800s who styled himself as this great inventor, but, you know, perhaps he was a bit of a scam artist. But the whole inspiration for this was the TVA manual, which apparently Short Round wrote. So maybe he's the one who remains. I don't know. But probably not. Oh, maybe that's what they're doing, you know, for their Jonathan Major problem. Huh. Now, that would take some amount of thought and planning. Anyway, and this, never mind. Anyway, the deal is Ravonna goes back and meets, you know, Miss Minutes, the cartoon clock, which is a separate entity at this point, I guess. And so the artificial intelligence female and the real female are responsible for the genius and wonder of Kang, who ultimately becomes, you know, the god of the multiverse, because so, you see, but still, this sort of girl boss template, I guess, type thing. Oddly enough, as I've said this, when it comes to woke feminism, it's mostly misandry with misogyny sprinkled throughout. because you have to conclude all these women are psychotic. Sylvie is, of course. Ravana sort of is. But there's a story there where there is this romance blossoming between Kang and her, or in this case, he's Victor Timely, which is a nod to Timely Comics, which Marvel's original name. Anyway, but ends up not trusting her because he has a line that I never have partners. And she said, I could be your partner. And so he kicks her aside. And then Miss Minutes was fine with that because Miss Minutes is also romantically obsessed with Kang. But anyway, Ravana shows up and decides she's going to prune him. Then finally, Mobius and Loki say, no, you can't do that. We need him to fix the problem, whatever. And then Sylvie shows up, kicks Ravana's ass because she's the only one who could, and then threatens to kill Timely herself. But Loki begs her not to. And he escapes. So there you go. And then Sylvie doesn't like Ravana, but instead of killing her, sends her through a doorway back to the end of time where the dead corpse of he who remains. And she's there with Miss Minutes. So there, yeah. It insinuates a lot, or teases things. So, maybe there's a little more of an attempt at something to this as it unfolds. And just the carnival atmosphere gave it a little more something. So it had a little more excitement to it, I guess. And again, the back and forth between Loki and Mobius is fun. But I remain incredibly dubious that there's a big payoff in this one. So now there's only 3 episodes left for them to do this. But, we'll see. But anyway, if there's a best episode so far, I guess this was it. Not by much, but it was a little more colorful in the action and stuff like that.